It's Father's Day, a warm Sunday afternoon in the heart of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, a place most people picture when they think of peace. Rolling green farmland, horse-drawn buggies moving quietly down country roads, a community where people still trust their neighbors, a place untouched by most of the ugliness of the modern world. An 18-year-old girl finishes church with her family, says her goodbyes, and starts walking home. She's done it dozens of times before. The road is familiar, the distance is short, just under half a mile. She never arrives. And what investigators will uncover over the next 10 months through thousands of hours of searching, a shocking arrest, and one of the most gut-wrenching plea deals this county has ever seen, will leave an entire community asking one question: how does something this evil happen here? To understand what happened to Linda Stoltzfoos on June 21, 2020, you first have to understand the world she lived in. The Bird in Hand area of Lancaster County sits in the heart of Pennsylvania Dutch country. It's home to one of the largest Amish communities in the United States. These are people who live quietly, by conviction. No smartphones, no social media, no security cameras watching their front porches. They walk to church. They trust strangers. They leave their doors unlocked. Linda Stoltzfoos was 18 years old. She was described by those who knew her as gentle, kind, and patient, a young woman who spent her spare time helping children with special needs at a one-room Amish schoolhouse. She had her whole life ahead of her. That Sunday morning, she attended church services as she did every week. When the service ended, she set off on foot toward her parents' home on Beechdale Road in Upper Lake Hawk Township. The walk was barely a half mile, a route she knew by heart. Somewhere along that route, Linda Stoltzfoos vanished. By the following morning, Linda's family had reported her missing. What should have been a routine Sunday had become every parent's worst nightmare. East Lampeter Township Police launched an immediate search. Within days, the effort had grown to an enormous scale. Volunteers from across the county, members of the Amish community, fire and rescue departments, all combing the countryside. By the end of the first week, the FBI had joined the search. Investigators were working with almost nothing. No surveillance footage, no phone to ping, no digital footprint. In a community where cameras don't exist and people don't carry devices, finding a missing person is like searching in a different century. What they did have were witnesses. Several people reported seeing Linda walking along Stumptown Road and the surrounding area late Sunday morning. A few of them also recalled noticing a vehicle in the area, a dark-colored car moving slowly, appearing more than once near the same stretch of road. Investigators began canvassing, knocking on every door, combing every field, using drones, canine units, ATVs, even horses to search the dense woodland of Welsh Mountain, a rugged, remote stretch of eastern Lancaster County that law enforcement had long known as a place where things go missing and are never found. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into a month. The searches kept coming up empty. But then something strange began to emerge. On July 10th, 19 days after Linda vanished, police made an arrest that sent shockwaves through the community. His name was Justo Smoker, a 34-year-old man from Paradise Township, just a few miles from where Linda was last seen. On the surface, Justo Smoker looked like any other man living in Lancaster County, but investigators had begun building a profile that painted a very different picture. Smoker had a history. Back in 2006, he had gone on a violent crime spree, a string of armed robberies and burglaries. Investigators noted something disturbing about his targets. Many of his victims had been Amish. He was convicted, sentenced to up to 30 years, but he only served 12 and a half years before being released on parole in February of 2019, just 16 months before Linda disappeared. Investigators had placed Smoker's vehicle near the area where Linda was last seen on the day she went missing. Cell phone records put him out of business in Ronks later that same afternoon, and when investigators searched nearby woodland, they found something buried: Linda's bra and stockings, hidden in the earth not far from the road. Smoker was charged with kidnapping and false imprisonment. He was placed in Lancaster County prison without bail, but Linda was still missing, and detectives knew they hadn't found the worst of it yet. Months passed. The searches continued. Police logged over 15,000 man-hours looking for Linda. They deployed submarines and waterways, used ground-penetrating radar, sent drones over thousands of acres. Her community prayed. Her family waited. In December 2020, 6 months after she vanished, prosecutors filed a murder charge against Smoker. The evidence that pushed them to that point was chilling. DNA analysis of the stocking found buried in the woods had come back with a match. Combined with everything else they had, the Lancaster County District Attorney's Office concluded that Linda was no longer alive. But they still didn't know where she was. That uncertainty, that limbo, is something no family should ever have to endure. Linda's parents, her siblings, her community, all of them in grief but without closure, without a place to mourn, without a grave to visit. Investigators understood this, and it became the driving force behind what happened next. In April 2021, nearly 10 months after Linda disappeared, prosecutors reached a decision that would divide public opinion. They offered Justo Smoker a plea deal. In exchange for his guilty plea to third-degree murder, and in exchange for leading investigators to Linda's body, Smoker would be sentenced to 35.5 to 71 years in prison. He would not face the death penalty. He would not face life without parole. For many in the public, the reaction was fury. This was a predator, a man who targeted the most vulnerable, most trusting people in his community. A man who had already been given a second chance after prison and used it to kill a teenager. Life without parole seems like the only appropriate response. But the decision hadn't been made lightly, and it hadn't been made without the family's blessing. Linda's family had one priority above all else. They wanted to bring Linda home. In the Amish faith, a proper burial is sacred, and Linda had been in the ground, alone in an unmarked location, for nearly a year. Her family needed to lay her to rest the right way. Prosecutors agreed, and on April 21st, 2021, the 10-month anniversary of Linda's disappearance, Justo Smoker led investigators to the place where he had buried her a second time, a spot behind a business along Route 41 in eastern Lancaster County, the same business where Smoker had once worked. Behind it, along railroad tracks, 42 inches below the surface, Linda was found, wrapped in a tarp. When Smoker finally spoke, what he described left investigators cold. He told them he had been driving on Beachdale Road on the morning of June 21st when he spotted Linda walking alone. He pulled over, he approached her from behind, he wrapped his arm around her neck and choked her. Then, when she stopped moving, he bound her with shoelaces, strangled her further, and drove to a remote location. He buried her in one location first, then, days later, returned and moved her body a second time to the spot behind his former employer's property. The coroner confirmed she died from asphyxia caused by strangulation. A stab wound to the neck was listed as a contributing factor. She had been alive when he approached her, walking home in broad daylight on Father's Day in one of the safest feeling communities in America. At sentencing, the judge called Smoker a predator of the worst kind. Prosecutors called his sentence the functional equivalent of a life sentence, specifically structured to ensure he would never breathe free air again. With an additional 17.5 years tacked on for violating his parole from his previous crimes, Smoker would need to be in his late 80s before he could even be considered for release. He apologized in court. He said he had robbed the family of time and memories. Linda's uncle, who had met with Smoker in prison, said Smoker had told him he couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and couldn't carry the weight of what he had done anymore. Whether that means anything, whether remorse means anything at that point, is something each person watching this will have to decide for themselves. Linda Stoltzfoos was given the burial her family had desperately needed. The community that had searched for her, grieved for her and prayed for her finally had a place to say goodbye. In the years that followed, something unexpected happened. Justo Smoker's own family, his pastor brother-in-law Tim Rogers and his niece Megan, reached out to Linda's family. They were devastated by what their relative had done, ashamed, broken. And yet, in one of the most remarkable stories to come out of this tragedy, Linda's family extended grace to them. They became, over time, something close to friends. Smoker's relatives wrote a book about the experience, and in an act of quiet, profound generosity, they chose to donate a portion of the proceeds to Amish special education in honor of Linda, the young woman who had spent her life helping children with special needs. As of today, Justo Smoker remains behind bars. He will be 87 years old before he is eligible for parole. The Pennsylvania Parole Board, at the request of the district attorney, handed down the maximum sentence for his parole violation. He will almost certainly die in prison. What happened to Linda Stoltzfoos is a reminder that evil doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come from somewhere far away. It doesn't only happen in dangerous cities or dark places. Sometimes it drives slowly down a quiet country road on a Sunday morning in a community where no one locks their doors, and it takes the most innocent person it can find. The people of Lancaster County haven't forgotten Linda. The Amish community hasn't forgotten her. And for those who spent 15,000 hours searching every field and creek and hillside for her, she is not a case number. She is a girl who walked home from church. She deserved to make it.